What is the terrifying secret of Bly Manor?
Who was that man peering through the window?
And who wants to go swimming in the lake?
These and other questions will be answered in this week's
It's Frenzy Frights.
Welcome to Frenzy Frights, a horror movie review show. My name is Gerry.
And I'm Chris.
And we are your hosts.
On Frenzy Frights, we're going to talk about horror movies, monster movies, creature features, and spook shows of all sorts.
Chris, what movie are we talking about today?
Thanks, Prof. Today we're going to look at The Innocents. This was directed by Jack Clayton. The screenplay was by William Archibald and Truman Capote. Additional dialogue was provided by John Mortimer. This is based on The Turn of the Screw, which was an 1898 novella by Henry James. The Innocents also was a play done by William Archibald. Now for our cast, we have Deborah Kerr as Miss Giddens, Peter Wingard as Peter Quint, Megs Jenkins as Mrs. Gross, Michael Redgrave as the uncle, Martin Stevens as Miles, Pamela Franklin as Flora, Clyde Jessup as Miss Mary Jessel, and Isla Cameron as Anna. Well, we have a couple of release dates on this. This came out in London on November 24th, 1961, and in LA, it debuted on December 15th, 1961. It has a running time of 99 minutes. So, Prof, I turn it to you. Can you give us a brief synopsis of this movie? And then we will follow up with our own thoughts.
You betcha. I'm about to spoil the whole movie, and there are some triggers for child abuse. Miss Giddens is interviewing for a job as a governess with the bachelor uncle of two young children. The uncle makes it clear that he wants as little to do with the kids as possible. He has a very active social life of some sort. He's a little cagey about what that is. There was a governess, Miss Jessel, but she died, don't you know. Miss Giddens takes the job saying, "More than anything, I love children." Well, that's a good thing, I guess. And she heads into the house. Bly Manor. Miss Giddens arrives at the house and takes in the beautiful grounds. She thinks she hears a female voice calling, "Flora, Flora." She doesn't see the caller, but she does meet the little girl, Flora, who seems to be a delightful child. They talk about life and death when Flora says, "Sometimes if people aren't good and taken by God to heaven, they just walk around here. Isn't that what happens?" We call that foreshadowing. Miles, on the other hand, he's the other child away at school, but Miss Giddens gets mail saying he's been kicked out for being unmanageable. I wonder what that means. This doesn't sound like the Miles that Mrs. Grouse, the housekeeper, knows, but at least the young master will be coming home. He arrives full of seemingly happy vim and vigor, and Miss Giddens gets to know Miles, and he is quite a little charmer. One day, she sees a man on the roof of the mansion tower, but when she goes to investigate, she finds only Miles. Another time in the attic, Miss Giddens finds some items in storage, one of which is a music box that plays a song Flora hums sometimes. Miles kind of attacks Miss Giddens in the attic and is very rough with her. Later, they play hide and seek. Hiding behind a curtain, Miss Giddens sees a shadowy figure and face of someone outside the window looking in. She describes the man to Mrs. Grouse. "It sounds like Peter Quint, but it can't be, because Peter Quint is dead." Mrs. Grouse has a good point, but clearly hasn't read the whole script yet, or even the book from Henry James. Miss Giddens finds a photo of Quint in the attic, and yep, it's him all right. Quint was the master's valet and came to run the house. He had died after coming home drunk with a nasty head injury. Miles is the one who found Quint's body. It was very traumatic because Miles worshipped Quint. We also learned that there was a relationship between Quint and Miss Jessel. The kids put on a play pageant, and Miles recites a poem looking out the window, calling for his lord to enter. Oh boy, that was a lot. Then at the lake, Flora tells Miss Giddens that Miles once saw a hand at the bottom of the lake. Flora hums the song from the music box, and a figure appears in the reeds near the lake. It's a woman. Miss Giddens figures there are ghosts. There's something going on secretly, whispering and indecent. The children are in trouble, she says. But what do the ghosts want? Quentin Jessel apparently had a wild sexual relationship. She was kind of pathetically in lust with him. He hit her and abused her, and they would have sex in the house, and Mrs. Grouse said that she saw them at it, and they didn't stop. And the children? Well, Mrs. Grouse doesn't know what they might have seen, but they were always with Quentin Jessel. When Quint died, Jessel went a little goofy and drowned herself in the lake. Miss Giddens thinks Quint and Jessel are ghosts trying to get back to the kids. She wants to go to London to tell their uncle, but then she goes to the schoolroom they have in the house, and she sees a vision of Miss Jessel crying and even finds wet tears. So she believes these ghosts are real and can affect the physical world. She decides she can't go to London, leaving the children to the ghosts. She believes that the ghosts want to possess each of the children and carry on with their canoodling. She must save them. Miss Giddens sends everyone out of the house except herself and Miles. They have tea. She asks if he is happy, and Miles gets upset and runs off. The two argue. She makes Miles admit he was kicked out of school for saying bad things and probably torturing animals. He vents and begins to channel Quint and then runs off. He falls and is very confused. Miss Giddens tries to get him to tell her the name of the man who taught him all this filth. He screams and is totally freaking out. She gets him to say Quint's name, and he freaks more and falls down. She holds him, saying everything will be better now. But then she sees that Miles is dead. She kisses Miles on the lips, and the credits roll. Whoa, quite a show. What are some of your initial ideas and thoughts about the background of this movie, Chris?
Well, thanks, Prof. As per usual, I'll get some movie trivia out of the way. I'll start with the cast. Deborah Kerr, who played Miss Giddens, is a legend. She was nominated for 6 acting Oscars and eventually got an honorary Oscar. Some of her notable films are From Here to Eternity, The King and I, An Affair to Remember, King Solomon's Mines, and Quo Vadis. She passed away in 2007 at age 86. She purportedly said this was her favorite acting performance. Megs Jenkins, as Mrs. Gross, had a long career in British film and television. Peter Wyngarde, who played Peter Quint, was an early British TV actor and is an accomplished stage and film actor as well. Martin Stevens, who played Miles, also appeared in the British horror flick Village of the Damned. And his final film was the Hammer movie The Witches in 1966. He retired from acting while he was still in his teens, and he became an architect. He's still alive at age 76. Pamela Franklin, who played Flora, made her screen debut in this movie at age 11. We previously saw and talked about her when we covered the movie The Legend of Hell House. She also appeared in the prime of Miss Jean Brodie and is still alive at age 75. I think we stated this already, but this is based on the 1898 novella, The Turn of the Screw, by novelist Henry James. The screenplay was adapted by William Archibald and Truman Capote, who used Archibald's own 1950 stage play, also titled The Innocents, as a primary source of text. In digging for some research, per Wikipedia I stumbled upon this. There was a lot of analysis of this film. The Innocents has received a lot of attention from academics and specialists in film theory, beginning with the literary theorist Edmund Wilson, who wrote extensively on the film's source novella, insisting that the supernatural phenomena were in fact the product of Miss Giddens' own sexual repression. Hello. According to literary scholar Leonard Orr, of many adaptations of James' work, The Innocents has received the largest amount of critical attention. Film scholar David J. Hogan reiterated the film's underlying themes of sexual repression becoming the focus of supernatural activity, and compared the elements of the film to Robert Wise's The Haunting. Have we covered that? Based on The Haunting of the Hill House? Yes, by Shirley Jackson. Hogan also interprets the film's final scene, as a, quote, perverse variation of the Sleeping Beauty story, as Kerr symbolically liberates the boy from his presumed possession with a kiss after he has fainted. In the book, 50 Classic British Films from 1932 to 1982, a pictorial record, out in 2013, film writer Anthony Slide noted, quote, the use of shadows, oblique camera angles, and atmospheric soundtrack, Jack Clayton not only captured the horror of James' story, but also its deeper sadness, the children's isolation from the real world, the governess's problematic sexuality, and the curiously pitiful nature of the former governess, Miss Jessel. In the United Kingdom, the UK, the original classification of this 1961 movie by the British Board of Film Censors, now the British Board of Film Classification, had been given this movie the, quote, X rating, which meant that no person under age 16 years would be allowed in the cinema to see it. Not even the kids that appeared in it, I wonder. There was a song by Kate Bush from the 1980 album Never Forever called The Infant Kiss, and that was purportedly inspired by this film. Mexican director Guillermo del Toro cites this film as an influence on his 2015 Gothic horror film Crimson Park. And that's the trivia. Prof, I think this was the first viewing for both of us. Let's take a step back. I'll let you take the floor. What were your initial reactions when you saw this film?
Well, one reaction was you mentioned in your last trivia fact that Guillermo del Toro used the film as an influence on Crimson Peak. Crimson Peak is in our list, so we're going to get to see that one too. That's great. So this was, like you said, this was my first viewing. I've heard about this movie for quite some time, heard it was very good, and heard a lot of comparisons to The Haunting. One thing I thought was fun was that Pamela Franklin is in this movie as the little girl Flora, and we had just seen her as an adult in The Legend of Hell House. So that was a lot of fun to see her as a little girl here. So the first thing I want to point out is that, whenever I talk about these movies, there's always a balance when I'm kind of thinking about how much I enjoyed it or how good the movie is. The comparison between how good a film it is, technically and, even artistically, but the quality of the filmmaking, as opposed to how enjoyable the film it is. And, it was compared to The Haunting a lot, and I can see the comparison. And I think it is as high a quality of a film as The Haunting. However, this is a 99-minute long film, and it seemed to be a lot longer to me. It wasn't as entertaining. It was definitely more a slow burn, but one that really never quite paid off. It was intense. It was very focused. It engaged me intellectually. I've thought about the movie since I've seen it quite a bit, actually, trying to balance some of the mysteries that were going on in the film. So those are all positive things and kind of lend itself to the fact that this was a well-crafted movie. I just didn't have a lot of fun watching it. A couple of things that I thought, we'll get to this a little bit more, but the uncle's abandonment of the kids, that scene with the uncle, just saying, I just don't care about these kids. Just take them and take care of them and don't bother me. And it led me to realize that same guy had someone working for him, his valet, Peter Quint, who realized that there were basically two unprotected children out in this, remote mansion, and that he was going to take advantage of that. And there was also a young, obviously needy governess that he kind of was a predator. He saw her as weak and someone that he could convince to do terrible things. And then he commits a sin that is so foul and gets her, ruins her soul too, to create a sin so foul. It creates this supernatural situation. And then the other thing, even if these terrible things did happen, as the governess thinks they happened, that is the way that she tried to deal with Miles at the end is no way to get someone over a traumatic problems. That is not, the medical association is not on her side doing that stuff. So those are some of my first impressions. Chris, what are your initial reactions of The Innocents?
Thank you, Prof. Yes, this, like you, was my first viewing as well. I think I had to read Turn of the Screw in college. It was a blur back then, but I think I was pretty sure that was on my course requirement to do on one class. Yeah, Prof, like you, this seemed to be longer too. I saw this in 2 50-minute chunks, and I wonder if it seemed long to me because of what little happened perhaps in the first 50 minutes. We just get immersed in the setting. I don't even know if there's like a true jump out of your seat scare moment. This is just this, and I don't want to say it necessarily meanders, but we're immersed in this world with this beautiful, rich setting in a black and white thing, and we see some suspicious things, but it just kind of moves a little slow in its own pace. And I don't know if it's because I'm kind of desensitized or I'm a more modern viewer, but we'll come to that down the road a little bit. I have to ask myself when I see a movie where I see like these large castles or these large castle-like houses, is there ever a movie where something happy happens in these things or something good? I mean, this is always ominous. And here's yet another movie we've seen where there's this large opious mansion, what have you, and nothing ever goes right in these things. As I'm watching this, I must have blinked and missed it where Flora left. I think she went off to London, but I thought she was going to come back in the movie, and she didn't. Now, as I'm piecing this together, the first question I had in my mind at the end of the film was whatever became of Flora, and I kind of had to rub my chin and think about that. Prof, I hate to do this. I keep doing this. I'm kicking myself. I don't consciously look for any Batman or comic book connections here to this or any movie, nor did I find any with this particular film. However, I am a comic book nerd, and I couldn't help but recall some of the Batman and Teen Titan comic books from the early 1970s that every now and then had a, quote, ghost story with a Gothic flavor and some type of ghost or spirit trying to cross to the other side. And that really gave me a little bit of a vibe and recollection here. Prof, now is the part of the show where we're both going to step back and kind of raise our glass to salute. We had some favorite movie moments in this film, so let's address them. Prof, I'll turn it to you first. What were some of your favorite moments of this movie?
All right, my first. It's not so much a moment; it's a series of moments, and it talks about this Mrs. Grouse or Mrs. Gross. Her accent threw me a little bit. And folks that know me, this is a good time to roll your eyes because I'm about to talk about David Lynch and how I was reminded of David Lynch in this Mrs. Gross character. If you've seen Twin Peaks, you know that there's a element, personality, some kind of a spiritual energy called Joe D. And this is what they call the horse is the white of the eyes and dark within. The white of the eyes is the white horse. And what this is the evil power of looking the other way, right? When you look to your side, you show the whites of your eyes. So this is Mrs. Gross knows that something has been going on. What are the kids seeing? What did the kids get involved in with Quentin Jessel? And she's very nonchalant about it. Oh, it was terrible. Oh, so horrible. She's nonchalant and really not very suspicious when she's telling Miss Giddens about what Quint and Jessel did or may have done with the kids. And I thought that in a lot of ways, she is just as evil as Quentin Jessel because she just let it happen. She just looked the other way. It's not my place to save these children who are being who knows what. I just thought that was a very powerful feeling for me as I was watching this movie, that this very kindly, kind of large, older, she's always sweet to the kids and always sweet to Miss Giddens, that she is one of the perpetrators here. And I just thought that was very intense and very unexpected. Did you see that the same way, Chris?
Prof, I not until you mentioned it, I have to confess. Yeah. Good point.
I mean, when she was telling her about it, she was just like, "Oh, so horrible. Oh, who knows?" And just like, but I'm not going to do anything about it. I just thought that was intense. So I guess the main question that people talk about when they're, going through this movie is the haunting real, or is Miss Giddens protecting her own, the stuff that she's bringing into the house? She mentioned at one point her own father punishing her, but always for my own good. And I thought that was a very subtle, there was a little hitch in her voice, and it made me wonder if there was, like, she had some, parental problems growing up. We see that nobody else admits to seeing these spirits, and I believe them. I don't think they're just, like, making it up. She's definitely the only one seeing these, except for maybe the kids. And, she kicks everyone out of Bly Manor to be alone with Miles, and he ends up dead. Are we really seeing the truth? Or is the whole movie basically an unreliable narrator, unreliable editor, unreliable screenwriter? Now, I think a lot of this was punched up from Truman Capote's work. A lot of this was clarified with some of what he did. If some of this is brought by Giddens, if she is bringing a lot of the real, like, seedy stuff into the house, and it really didn't happen, that kind of would explain why Mrs. Gross isn't more freaked out about what happened to the kids. And then if she doesn't have any weird issues, why the kiss on Miles' lips at the end? And how did he actually die? Did he was so freaked out that he had a stroke? I don't know. Or did she really kill him to hide her own issues? I know these are kind of the routine stories or questions people have about this story. Do you have any insight? Did you see anything in this movie to lead you to one way or another, Chris?
No, Prof. I was about to comment that I took almost everything at face value, and it seems like I missed a lot of things when I'm reading all these articles about the film. I just took everything just all on the surface level, and I like exploring it after the fact, and I'm wondering if anybody who else would be a first-time viewer of this were somebody who was going to either A, catch all these things, or B, be like me and just be totally in the dark and just take everything at face value and just go, well, that's sort of an interesting movie, but nothing more deeper than that.
Yeah, it is. It's tricky with these movies. Like what's that movie? Blow Up or Blow Out? One of them is the John Travolta one. There's another one that's different. That is, the whole movie is like unreliable. You can't trust what you see, and I like that in these movies. And I intended to watch this movie again, and I would like to watch this movie again, particularly the beginning, because it's got kind of one of those Finnegan's Wake beginning and endings. Like the movie begins in the middle of the end of the movie, right? So you just see the tail end of the end of her talking, and then you see it again at the end of the movie. So it's like the movie ends and then it starts again. And I think I'd like to see those first couple of scenes again to really see what she may have been bringing, Giddens may have been bringing to the house herself.
Yeah, Prof, like you, to talk about things I loved about this movie, I loved the opening, as you said. The film opens in a black screen as the song, Oh, Willawally by Oric and Paul Den is being sung by a child. And I think it's really effective, and it's very creepy. And then we have a pause, and then there's this black screen, and we hear the sounds of nature. We hear birds chirping, we hear insects, and then it's allowing us for our mind to paint the initial picture, and I thought that was a really effective move with the film. Prof, I thought the children in the cast were excellent. A lot is asked of them, and I think they deliver and hold their own with somebody as seasoned as Miss Kerr. Pamela Franklin as Flora is great, and in particular, we've got this Martin Stevens as Miles. And I love this because he's asked to act well beyond his years. He's somewhat flirtatious and a little bit daring, which takes Kerr's character aback a little bit. He rides horseback. I think he might be riding without a saddle. He's asked to say some very nasty things. And he's got this great dramatic death scene at the end of the film. Yeah. And boy, if you tell an actor you're going to do all this in a movie, that's a lot of meat. Yeah. For any actor in a movie, adult or otherwise. And I thought this was fantastic. Prof, as I stated previously, I took a class in film symbolism. I guess the quote, sexually repressed symbolism was lost on me. I took everything at face value as opposed to a film with Legend of Hell House where that was kind of hitting me over the head. And ironically, that also had Pamela Franklin in the cast. Really, really interesting there. Prof, I take it this is the 1800s England, and what a seemingly carefree life these kids and Annie seem to have on the surface. I don't know who provides for them, but they've got this opulent house. They've got places to play, everything spacious, rowboats, horses, things at their leisure. And what a world to have lived in and have all this macabre stuff happening. Well, those were the things I liked. Prof, I think you were steering us to some discussion items, so I hope I didn't cut you off. No. But was there anything that you wanted to dive into by way of discussion that might be a little thought-provoking? I have to say, You threw me a lob. I swung and missed because I couldn't catch it. But were there any other things that you have in your arsenal that you might want to pick apart with this particular film?
Well, you asked where did Flora go, and I think she went to London to become a mental medium and then go into the Legend of Hell House.
Ah, perfect.
That's what she did, yeah.
How apropos.
So we've been watching a lot of haunted house movies. This is one of them. So this is Bly Manor. This is haunted by ghosts. So the house isn't evil itself like Hill House, right? Hill House in The Haunting, there was something wrong with the house and it was collecting people. And so there were personalities in the house, but the house itself was the problem. The Belasco house in The Haunting of Hill House, that's the one with Roddy McDowall we just recently did. This is more like that, where you have a personality or personalities that are in the house. It's not, the problem isn't the physical structure. It is what has happened in this place. And I think the Allardyce house in Burnt Offerings is the same way. So, and that's assuming that these are really ghosts. Or is the haunting all in Geddon's head? So if that's true, the house would be more like Manderley from Rebecca, which we also reviewed. So it's not something that's actually happened or a spirit that's actually in the house. It's somebody's psychology or the physical, remnants of somebody that is gone, and what they've left behind is the real problem. So I think, do you have any kind of thoughts, Chris, about the nature of Bly versus some of the other houses that we've talked about?
Well, here we have a movie which just seems to entrap people in their mind, be it Geddon's projection that this is something happening, that the haunting is real or not. And we've got the illusions of her being a light being shined on this apparition on top of a tower and her immersed in this world versus everything else seems to be affecting other people. This is only affecting Giddens. But whereas the other outliers were affecting multiple people, in this one, it's just basically Giddens herself and perhaps the consumption with the other two kids. There is the maid isn't afraid of anything in this place, but at other places that we look at, it seems like there are multiple people affected by what's happening here as the result of this. So I'm led to take a step back, and as we're even discussing this, wondering, is this all in Giddens' head? Because this would also make the conclusion a little bit more firmer, where we see that Miles is actually dead. Holy cow. And then we didn't see like somebody crossing over to the other side or him reviving and in the apparition going to the Wingard character going over to the other side and then getting out necessarily a happy ending here. So it does leave me pause, and it does leave me with a little bit of a head scratcher. And I think I'm reevaluating this movie as we're talking about it, that, hey, maybe there was something here that I missed, and now I'm liking it a little more, that it kind of had a little bit of an ambiguous ending. And I think I read that's what the director was kind of striving for.
Yeah, I can see that. It definitely is ambiguous, I think. Have you read other versions of Turn of the Screw? Like, I read this in the book in college, and I did see Bly Manor, the Mike Flanagan was a Netflix show, and I liked that very much. Did you see that one?
No, I'm afraid I didn't. And when I got it in college, I probably read halfway through and decided to join the buddies and go out gallivanting and called it a day. And then, I skimmed it, let's say. I did a pretty healthy college effort skim on that one. But I remember this was on the required reading list of the college course, indeed.
Gotcha. All right. So if you were going to rank this or rate this compared to, some of the other movies we've seen, how would you do that?
Boy, I had a lot of difficulty with this one. And this has been the biggest challenge out of all the movies we've looked at so far, Prof. Let's check this by the numbers. Was this film well acted? Absolutely. Was it well directed? Totally. Was it effectively shot? Yes. There was not a offbeat here with the way this was done. So I'm asking myself, if this was well acted, well directed, and effectively shot, why wasn't I totally engrossed with it? I don't know. This is not a bad movie, and I have to underline it. This is not a bad movie, and I know it's revered, but I'm questioning myself how much I liked it and if I'm being influenced by how other critics or how other horror fans liked it. I don't want to insult an age demographic here, but I'm wondering if a younger audience that's a professed horror fan would make of this movie, because it kind of plods on a little slow there. I think, am I a little more, hey, give me something. You know, I need to see a grisly death. I need to see something happening here. 50 minutes in, nothing really is going on. And I need a little bit more than that to hold my attention and hold my interest. And I don't know if that's just a product of my culture or what it is. Now, the beauty of our discussion, though, is having me reassess my opinion and taking a step back and looking at it now saying, okay, perhaps this was meant to be ambiguous in the end, and this was perhaps all in her head. And if I took it at an angle like that, now that's giving me a little more food for thought, because I was totally going to come on board and say, if I was to rate it or score it, you know, I was going to say maybe 6.5. But if you think 6.5 out of 10, that's still a D. And I think it's certainly above a D movie. And I would say probably this is a strong C plus B minus. I'm kind of in a gray area, if you will, because I'd have to invent a number that doesn't necessarily exist, or like a color in the spectrum that's kind of not there. This is high average, below above average, somewhere in this realm. I can't even assess a number to it, because I don't know. It would be too harsh of me to give it a number, because I would fear it'd be way, way too low than this film deserves. So I'm really in a gray area of saying this is a very, 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 very above average horror movie to a very, very, very above average horror movie. This is somewhere in the middle, and I'm really puzzled by this. But I think it is definitely worth a re-examination as the discussion. You, Professor, I have to applaud you and tap my cap to you, because you're making me think about this, and I'm reading a little bit more into it, that there's probably more here than meets the eye, though. Still, I have to take a step back. I didn't catch any of the other stuff that the film critics caught with the repression stuff, but I'll leave it there. Prof, do you have to rate this? And I can ask, did you possibly see things in here that you obviously saw some things I missed, but did you catch any of the sexual repression stuff? Did you catch anything else? And how would you rate this movie, my friend?
Yeah, I think that her sexual repression, the only thing that I saw was that this was the first time that she was living away from her family. She mentioned that at the beginning when she was interviewing for the job. And then later, when she was at the house, she talked about how her father did things to her for her own good. And it felt like that was a clue. It was said in a way and then brushed off and moved past. Like she had something going on, something was happening at her house that made her kind of think this way. So I don't know what that was, but that's what I felt. So totally agree with your analysis of this. Great acting, great direction, great cinematography. The house looked great. It all just rumbled along just dandy. I think this was a high quality film. Definitely not a B movie. This was made to be a good movie, similar to The Haunting. But like I said before, this is a much shorter movie than The Haunting, and it felt longer. So like I said, I used the objective quality of the film as well as how much fun I had watching it, because these are horror movies. They're supposed to be fun. So I think this movie is definitely a similar quality of The Haunting, but not as much fun. So when I first watched it, this was about a week ago, I said, I'll give this a B. This is a solid movie. Not a great time. I would recommend somebody watch it, that they would enjoy it. However, since I've watched it, I've been thinking about it. I won't say consistently, but just about every day it's come up in my mind. Oh, what about that? What about that? What about that? And I think that, for me, gives it a little boost. So I'm thinking I would boost this to a B+. And one question that I realized I had, that how did Quint actually die? I don't think I know that. He came home with some kind of a horrific head injury and then went out to the yard and Miles found him. It sounds like there's more to it, and I don't know if that was couched in, clues in the movie, or if that's just you had to have read the book to know. Did you pick up anything like, what did you think about Quint dying?
No, I presume Mrs. Gross knew everything, but she just sort of kind of buried it. And it was probably like stated, perhaps, but I just got lost with it because Gross was so dismissive of it. So I kind of got dismissive of it myself. I'm not sure. If it was there, I missed it.
The horse is the white of the eyes.
Yes.
Well, thank you for checking out Frenzy Frights. Check out our other shows, The Professor Frenzy Show, where we cover indie comics, That Guy in That Show, where we look at great character actors, and our Twilight Zone episode review, where we review Twilight Zone episodes. Thanks for watching and listening.
It's